the
Recording in progress.
Isis, the different levels of Isis, that there's Nefesh Adam, and the same way, the level of Isis by Hashem is the idea of Gilui Oir, the different levels of Giluyim and revelations that there are. And these different levels of Giluyim, all of them is a person has to be mizboinen and see that it's all echad, it's all one, and kol hamarich be'echad, someone that realizes and is mizboinen in this echad in a type of way to be able to understand how everything is all part of Hashem's oisias, so, and it's all giluyim from Hashem, so then he receives the hamshachas from all the different levels from above. So first he gave a mashal of the oisias of all the different levels in speech by a person, or level of oisias or letters by a person, the most external levels of letters of speech, and then he worked his way backwards, thought, intellect, will, delight, and from this he started speaking about how it is by the Eibishter as well. And he was speaking first about the levels of the letters of speech and the letters of thought, the way it is Lamaila, that this corresponds to the spheres of Malchus versus the sphere of Bina, that Malchus is a level of Alma Disgalia, the level of letters, the way they are revealed, the level of Machshava, that's the level of Almin Discasian, the concealed world, that's the letters that are concealed within the person's thought and not revealed outward, that's in the level of Bina, and in general, even higher than that, there's the levels of the way the letters are in Chochmah and the levels of the world of Atzilus in general. So now he's going to continue in this explanation on the bottom of the 7th page, line 26 of page Yud Aleph, about just like we see in the person there's higher than the letters of thought and speech, so too the letters by Hashem, the revelations, the Giluyim by Hashem, are as well levels that are higher than what we were referring to before, just on the level of Atzilus and Chachma and so on. So he says, the bottom of the page, just like in the person's nefesh down here below. There are letters, not just in the revealed powers, which is intellect, emotion, speech, and so on, but it's also in the transcendent and encompassing and not revealed powers of will and delight. Similarly understood above. Also in the level of Keser, there are letters. There are letters that are letters of engraving. The difference between written letters, the letters that are engraved. Top page Yud Beis. Like the Rebbe always emphasizes this idea that written letters are something that is additional. It's on top of what you're writing. You take ink, you write on a parchment, on a paper, and some other thing. There's the parchment, and there's the ink that's on top of it. Yes, it might become absorbed in it, but it's not one entity. On the other hand, as opposed to engraved letters, these are one thing with the thing in which they are engraved in. The letters are from the thing that's engraved in and in the thing that's engraved in. Kalim and Oisius are very closely related in Chassidus and Kabbalah. And the idea of the difference between the way Kalim exist in Atzilus, that they are a separate entity, versus the Kalim that are there concealed in Keser, like the letters that are completely concealed within the person. The Kalim, the Kalim, the way they're in Atzilus, similar to the idea of Oisius and letters, they are an additional existence to the Oir of Atzilus, if you will, to the Oir Nesaf that's made in Atzilus. But the vessels that's in Keser, they are from it, and in it, they are one entity with Keser itself. Furthermore, there's an even deeper level of distinction. In engraved letters, there's two types of levels of engraving. Chakika stam, an ordinary type of engraving, where you do not engrave the letters through and through. It's just engraved in something, but there's still, that thing still has a back to the letters and so on. On the other hand, there's chakika mever le'ever. There's like the engraving of the letters on the luchas, which was an engraving that went through and through from one side right through to the other side. The oisis chakika stam yesh lem beis kibble. Ordinary engraved letters that don't go through and through have a receptacle to it. And there's something in which they are grasped. In other words, there is the, like we said, the backdrop to the letters, if you will, the back of the letters itself, which is the actual stone that's engraved in. In additional to that, if one engraves into a precious stone, and it's not an engraving that's through and through, it's an engraving that's only a one-sided engraving, so then that causes that the brilliance of the stone is not as brilliant. It becomes darker in the area of the engraving. In the place where it's engraved, so the precious stone is not as brilliant as in the other parts of the stone where there is no engraved letters. As opposed to when something is engraved through and through. There is no substance, there's no receptacle, there's no place like where the letters are like supported by. They also do not darken at all this precious stone. This type of difference between engraved that's not through and through versus engraved that's through and through is the same difference in Keser, how the Isis and Kalim are there in the external part of Keser to the inner part of Keser. The B'chitzonis HaKeser in the external part of Keser, HaKelim, the vessels or the letters, they're like an ordinary engraving where there's a back and so on. They have some type of grasp and they conceal a little bit. As opposed to the vessels that are in the inner level of Keser, there is no grasp to them whatsoever, and they're not concealed whatsoever, just like when engraving something on a precious stone down here below. Now the Rebbe is going to take this even higher. It calls out line 23 in the second to last paragraph. All of this is referring to the levels after the tzimtzum. But in truth, even prior to the tzimtzum, there are many levels. And in these multiple levels before the tzimtzum, there are also the level of letters. For example, we enumerated these different levels at the beginning of the Maimer in passing. There's the level in the Ernest of Shlifnei HaTzimtzum of what's called Hashara B'Koyach. So now he's going to translate it. Then he just mentioned it. Now he's going to explain this a little bit more. Sheshir Ba'atzmei B'Koyach, Hashem Kaviyachol, estimated within himself in the potential. What's it going to look like? Everything that will be in actuality in the future. That is the lowest level, the final most level of the Oden Sof Shalifnei HaTzimtzum before the actual Tzimtzum Arishan, when he made a Chol L'Makom. And then the next thing he says, well, even higher than that, to Inyan Aliyas Haratz, is the level of the will, the way it went up in Hashem's thought that he wanted to create the world. All the B'Tzoyne Kol Mashasad Liyos, that it arose in his will, everything that's going to be. And that's a second level up from the Tzimtzum. Well, the Maili Yoiser, and even higher than the Alois HaRatzon, who are Oyer Shekoidem Alois HaRatzon, it's the light that precedes before there arose Hashem's will for everything it's going to be after the Tzimtzum. V'hu Amshacha Klolis. It's a general type of Amshacha. Shagam bebchina zu kol hashtalshlus. Since it's Amshacha, even though there was no actual will, it already includes in it the general Seder Ishtalshlus. Top of page Yud Beis, I'm sorry. And even higher is the level of Atik that's preceding the Tzimtzum. Just like there's in Keser, before Atzilus, there's a level of Atik, there is a corresponding and similar level of Atik in the Eirasaf before the Tzimtzum. The word Atik, one of the meanings of it is like copying from one document to another document. What does that mean when you're copying something? The Afshu copying means the very same words, concepts that are in the first document, you are moving and copying over to the second document. Still in all, it's still a movement. It's still being copied over. So similarly as well, there's a type of movement of the oir from like one level to another level. This is a cause and a possibility that following this hataka, there should be a source for the source of the world. It's not even a direct source for the world. But it starts the ball rolling for the idea of worlds. And the Rebbe adds in the parentheses, since it has to do with eventually from it coming about the idea of worlds. So in this level is also included Ishtalshlus. Well, Maili Yoiser, even higher, who in Iskalus, Klolus Ishtalshlus Batzmusi. It's the idea of including the general Ishtalshlus in Hashem's very essence. And even higher than that is where Hashem's essence includes the entire Ishtalshlus. There's a very subtle difference that he's going to explain a little bit as he goes on. One is from the perspective of Ishtalshlus. It's the way Ishtalshlus is part of it. Another is, the higher one is, it's Hashem, and because he is who he is, it's his perspective and his inclusion of the Seder Ishtalshlus. So he's going to give an example by the koiches, the way they're to be found in the nefesh. So he says in line 9, Kamayel Derech Mashal, the koiches are nefesh bottom lamata, and the soul powers by a person down here below. Sheyesh lama koiches, Moishem klulim be'etzma nefesh. They're the soul powers, the way they are part of his very essence. That is one level. Then there is not looking at how the soul powers are, where they exist, but you're looking at the soul. And the soul, because of its completion and perfection, it has all the koiches. It's a subtle difference, but it's a higher level. So just like there's these two distinct ideas. In the nefesh, so too it's also above. There's the entire shtalshlus, the way it's included in Hashem's very essence. There's the level, the way the essence includes in it the shtalshlus. But after all of this, what's the point of this? The chol bechinas elu hem bechinas ha'oisis k'meshehem koinem atzimtzum. All these different levels, including the way Atzmus includes Seder Ishtalshlus. So this inclusion of Seder Ishtalshlus, that's the Oisius, the way they are in Hashem's essence. So now he enumerates. There is the Oisius Shebchias Hashara B'Koyach. There's the Oisius, that's that level where Hashem potentially estimated how everything is going to be. and then the Aliyas Haratzon, and then there's the way Hashem's will arose within himself before the Tzimtzum. Those two levels are similar to the letters of speech. How come? What's the similarity with letters of speech? Like it's explained in many places. Both the light of the before the Tzimtzum, that's in the level of Ashara, and also the light before the Tzimtzum, that within which it arose Hashem's will to create. These are already things that are openly have to do with another. It's about the creation already. The Avshu Koidim Tzimtzum, though it's still, there is no other yet. It's not like real speech where you're actually talking to someone else. It's prior to the Tzimtzum. Within himself, there's already that set aside light and revelation. The way it's associated with has to do with another. It's still something that is for himself and within himself. Therefore, in the Oren Sof Shlifnat Tzimtzum, it's the level that's similar to the letters of speech. It's, perhaps we could say it's like the power of speech, the way the person doesn't yet speak, but he has that power and capability of speech within himself. And then, higher than those two levels of Hashara B'Koyach and Aliyas Haratzon, Va'oisius, K'moshe B'Amshacha Klolis, Chakayim Aliyas Haratzon, and the letters, the way they are in the general Amshacha, before it arose Hashem's will to create, these are letters of thought. The light that's prior to the rising of the will, that's the light totally for himself. It doesn't have to do yet with the other, and therefore it's like the person thought that's completely internal. It's not about the other person. The ois is b'chinas atik, ad b'chinas ishtalshos k'meishu kol batzmusi, ulamayla yos k'meishu atzim kol loisam, and then the final few levels going upwards. The letters, the way they're in Atik, and the levels of Ishtalshus, the way it's part of Hashem's essence, and then even higher, Hashem's essence includes Ishtalshus. Well, these three levels are similar to what we spoke about in the previous shir. Masha Nefesh, Atzma, Malaya, Oisir, that the Nefesh itself is filled with letters. And now we're going to go back to the point that he began this whole topic with. This is what it means, whoever lengthens in the word echad, in thinking about the letters being one with Hashem, they lengthen his days and years. Through the lengthy and in-depth contemplation in all the levels of letters. Until the level of letters, the way the essence includes them. Then it comes down to him from that level that the person is contemplating in it. And because of that, they lengthen his days and his years, because he connects with all of those levels that will give him all this power and might. Top of page Yudalid, Oisvav. So this was brought in, was because we brought in the Kala Eina Amin. This was all to help explain the Kala Eina Amin B'chol Koiche. As he says in Oisvav, whoever answers Amin Yesh Merabah with all of his might, they tear up his decree. And we said even after the decree has been sealed and decided, how can that be that they could tear it up? It's even though in Seder Ishtalshlus the decree is already there, still in all, he's going to reach higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. The Pirish B'chol Koiche, what does it mean with all of his power? We explained that Chassidus compares it to what it says, now it should increase the koyach of Adnai. What does that mean? A person through his avodah affects an addition and an increase in the name Adonai. The name Adonai of Hashem is associated with when we talk about causing increase in the sphere of Malchus, we're not just talking about Malchus Datzilus. But even the level of Malchus of the Ein Sof, the way it's higher and higher, going before the Tzimtzum even. So now we have to understand how exactly does that work? What exactly does that mean? By prefacing Hamavur by Sophist L'Torah Oyer Dibra Maskva Ninasati, what is explained in the additions to Torah Oyer, that the Maimer entitled Vaninasati, Be'inyan Hamshachas B'chiras Malchus to Adam Kadm, concerning the drawing down of Malchus of the level of Ak. Shuhu B'chinas Izgalus Liyas Nikra B'Shem Chacham V'Chazdan Chulu. Malchus is all about revelation. So now the idea of Malchus, the Ak, is the level that now it can be drawn down in a way that it's even applicable, and he's revealed in such a way that it's possible to call Hashem by these terms of a Chacham and a kind one and so on. So what's the point of being able to call him? What happens? What's gained by that? Like, for example, by a person down here below. Through praising him that he's a Chacham and he's a kind one, he's inspired and he's awakened, and he's encouraged that this wisdom and this kindness, which is present by him, but it's concealed by a person saying, "You're such a wise person, help me understand what the Gemara is saying over here," or "You're such a kind person, help this person out," or whatever. It's not that the person wasn't kind beforehand, it's not the person wasn't wise beforehand, but Lapoil, by saying this and revealing this, we are able to draw this out and bring this out from the concealed to the revealed. So, in a similar vein, when we are able to call Hashem by the terms Chacham and Chazan and so on, so then we draw this down. We draw this down from Hashem as well. But there's one small difference. Line 14. Down here below, there's the existence of wisdom and kindness even prior to the person being called as a Chacham and Chazan. The effect of the praises is only drawing down from a concealed state to a revealed state. But above, prior to our calling Hashem by the names Chacham and Chazan, there is no existence of Chacham and Chesed in existence. The Chol Mitziyusam Nasa Rakai de Ashvachim, all their entire existence is created through the praises. This is all to understand concerning the Hamshacha that we're drawing down from the Malchus de Ein Sof. Okay, in Yuvon, line 19, so it will be understood. Gamba Hamshacha Mchias Malchus de Ein Sof. Also the Hamshacha from Malchus de Ein Sof. V'yisedem ezem she'inyin zeu be'ikir b'Hamshacha Mchias Malchus de Ein Sof. Primarily, this idea we have to create this Chacham v'Chesed is primarily in the Hamshach of Malchus de Ein Sof. And he's going to go on and explain that further. I think we'll stop over here right now. We'll begin again from the comparison to Malchus de Ein Sof.